Audience research engages with a relatively small group of individuals to gain completely detailed and in-depth data about something. The purpose of this is to find out what people of the public like. I have used this when I had to ask the public about euthanasia for my documentary. Audience data is the number of people who watch a TV programme or listen to a radio channel. The methodology for this is secondary, as most of the data would be already written down for me. Quantitative, as it would be a numerical form, and I would use content analysis for my technique, as I would have to analyse the data to find out what I need. The purpose of this is to find out what type of shows people like and how many people watch them. I did this when I went on Barb to find out what channels and programmes were most watched, which was similar to my documentary. Audience profiling is an advertising/marketing term for the demographic and personal characteristics of members of the target audience for a media product. The methodology I would use for this is primary, as I would do the research myself. Qualitative, as I would want it to be very detailed analysis, and I would use observations, as I would have to observe the audience to find out what it is that they like. The purpose of this is to know what age or gender your audience fits under and what they like. I would use this to find out what my target audience would be. We did this when we had to research our magazine shows. Demographics and geodemographics is the information concerning the social status, class, gender and age of the population. It also involves where and how people live. The methodology I would use for this is primary, as I would have to look up what type of people my audience fit under. I would use quantitative, as it would be numerical data, and I would use surveys to find out from my targeted audience. The purpose of this is to find out whereabouts your target audience are, and I would use this when thinking about my chocolate adverts. For example, if my audience was based in the country, I wouldn't place a country advert in the city. Consumer behaviour is the study of individual groups or organisations in how they select, secure and dispose of products, services, experiences or ideas. The methodology for this would be primary, as I would study this myself. Qualitative, as I would want it to be detailed data, and I would use observation to find out how the audience selects and disposes of the products. The purpose of this is to find out how the target audience uses the product, so you can make yours better if it's used badly. For example, with the chocolate adverts, if people like a certain type of chocolate, then I would think about making mine similar. Consumer attitudes. When a person feels one way or another about a product, service, person or place, it is said to be generalised consumer attitude that could affect the marketing of that person or product. The methodology for this would be primary and qualitative, as I would do it myself and I would want it to be detailed. I would use focus groups to find out what type of things people like as a group. This is to find ways to make your product more enjoyable or better in the way that you address the target audience. Audience awareness. How much is the audience involved in the film or radio show that you are producing? The methodology I would use for this is secondary and quantitative, as most of it would already be written down for me. It would be a numerical form. I would use content analysis and sampling to find out what the audience feels about my documentary or advert. Looking at similar products, I would find out how to make mine better for the audience. Market research is that which assesses the likely success of a new commercial venture by investigating its potential demand from customers and compiling the results in a form of data. The purpose of this is so you know how successful your product will be, looking at similar product successfulness. I did this when I had to look for similar documentary viewing figures for my documentary. Product market is something referred to when pitching a new product to the public. For example, a new Cadbury's chocolate would be low market. It depends on the segment of the market you aim it towards. The methodology for this would be primary and qualitative, because I would research it myself and I'd want the data to be very detailed. I would use focus groups and questionnaires to find out which group of the public like the product the most. The purpose of this is to find out where your product would stand, and I would do this by looking at similar products, for example with my music video. Me and my partner looked at similar R&B music to find out where that stood. Competition is the group, person or company which rivals against you with similar products or brands to you. The methodology for this would be secondary, as I would have to look up similar competitions on the internet or in books. It would be qualitative data, as I would want it to be very detailed. I would use unstructured interviews to find out what groups of people like the similar products or not. The purpose of competition is to figure out how successful your product might be, depending on similar ones. I use this in my documentary work when I had to go on Barb and look for viewing figures for documentaries based on euthanasia. Competitor analysis is an assessment of the strengths and weaknesses of current and potential competitors. The methodology and techniques I would use are secondary and qualitative because the data would be already written down for me, but I would want it to be detailed. I would use content analysis to analyse my competition depending on whether they did well or not. The purpose of this is to find out their weaknesses and use it as a strength for you to find out how you could strengthen your work. I did this when I looked at people who didn't like documentaries similar to mine. Advertising placement is where you would place your advert in sensible places on billboards, magazines, television, etc. The methodology I would use for this is secondary, as I would look at similar ones to how they've placed theirs. It would be qualitative, as I would want it to be very detailed. I would observe similar ones on websites, books and published articles. The purpose of this is so that you get it right. It will help the audience want to buy your product. I would do this by looking at similar adverts, e.g. for our chocolate advert, that you wouldn't put a chocolate advert next to something about dieting. Advertising effects are how you persuade the audience to buy your product, what effect it has on the audience. The methodology for this would be secondary and quantitative, as I would look at similar ones that are already out there, and I would want it to be numerical form data. The techniques I would use would be observational and surveys, as I would observe similar ones. However, I would also ask the public what they liked about it. The purpose of this is to persuade the viewer or have a good effect on the audience. I would look at similar ones, for example with my chocolate adverts. Production research helps identify what resources you will need, whether your product will be profitable within the current market. The purpose of this is that you know how well it will work if you are able to and how you can do it. I use this in all of my pieces, especially my music video, when we researched into similar ones. Content means what's in the advert, what it consists of. For example, the mise-en-scène, the props, the people, and how you place it. The methodology I would use for this is primary, as I would research it myself. I would use qualitative, as I would want it to be a detailed analysis. And I would use recce's, casting, interviews to find out where I would place my advert, who would be in it, etc. etc. The purpose of this is to make your advert as brilliant as possible. For example, the locations, the people, the music and the facts. I use this in my music videos when we had to go out and take pictures of locations which we think would be good for our music video. The viability. Is your product viable? Is it capable of working successfully? And how capable is it? The methodology I would use is primary and qualitative again, as I would research all of it myself and I would want it to be detailed analysis. I would use product testing and surveys to find out what the public likes about these adverts and how successful they have been. By looking at other products with similar qualities to yours, I would think about how viable mine would be. I would use this with chocolate adverts by looking at similar adverts to mine and how successful they were. Placement media is buying and placing advertisement in other various medias, for example television, radios or newspapers. The methodology for this would be secondary and qualitative, as most of it would be already placed for me, but however I would want it to be detailed. I would look in things such as books, magazines, websites and radios to get my inspiration. We used this when we did our magazine show Trapstar, when we had to promote our music videos. And I also did this when I was creating my documentary, where I looked at how other similar documentaries had placed their adverts. Finance and costs. This is the management and payment of large amounts of money before it can be acquired or done. The methodology I would use for this is secondary and quantitative, as I would have to look through books and websites to find out what I need, and I would want it to be numerical data. The purpose of this is to work out if you have enough money to create what you're trying to produce, whether you would have to deposit anything first, and I would use this to work out the cost of my advert or what I would need to be in it. Technological resources are what resources you can afford to be in your production, for example, cameras, tripods, travel, etc. The methodology I would use for this is secondary and quantitative, as I would look on websites to find out how much products are, and I would display it in numerical form data. The techniques I would use for this is content analysis, as I would have to analyse websites and books to find out how much things cost. The purpose of this is to find out how much you can afford in such a short budget to make your production. I did this for my documentary when I had to create a budget and look at how much props would be, the camera equipment and the travel. The personnel. These are the people employed in an organisation. The methodology would be primary, as I would have to find the personnel for myself. Qualitative, as I would want it to be detailed analysis of these people. And the techniques I would use would be interviews, emails and phone calls. The purpose of this is to get the right people with experience in the field. I used this for my documentary when I had to create a crew list to find out who I wanted to be behind my crew. Locations. A real place as opposed to a studio where you would locate your advert, linking to your target audience. The methodology for this would be primary and qualitative, as I would go out looking for locations myself and I would want it to be detailed. The techniques I would use would be recce's and observations. The purpose of this would be to look for what locations would fit right within your theme. I use this for my music videos where me and my partner had to go out and create location recce's to think about what would be best for our video.